You are in for an interesting ride.
I wanted to share with you and Mark the passing of an excellent UFO investigator and researcher, Butch Witkowski. This was posted by his good friend Lon Strickler, that Butch had died on Thursday, the 13th of January 2022. As well as being a member of MUFON, Butch also ran his own project, which was the UFO Research Centre in Pennsylvania. I had interviewed Butch back in 2015 on 24th of February, and I leave that with you for your interest here and hope you enjoy it. Rest in peace, Butch, and send us some information from the other side. We'll be listening. Ammach Files.
Hello and welcome to a brand new Ammach program. This is the Ammach Files with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Ammach Files airs every Tuesday from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. GMT. Hosted by peoplesinternetradio.com. I'll be exploring the mysteries of extraterrestrial contact with experiencers and researchers. I'll be bringing you some of the latest developments and comment in this most important and extraordinary field. So, buckle up. You are in for an interesting ride.
Hello folks, and welcome to program number 21 of the Ammach Files on the 24th of February 2015. Now, we've been enjoying a bit of a heat wave here down on the southeast coast of the UK at a balmy 10 degrees centigrade. Good grief. Even though I think the barometer is now chilling down to about 3 centigrade. Anyway, nothing like the minus 45 degrees centigrade that centigrade, they've had in Manitoba, Winnipeg, Canada, where it can be really dangerous. Sorry, my teeth aren't in tonight. It can be really dangerous to be out in those climates. My goodness. However, the reason I'm telling you about Manitoba and Canada is because it seems there's something that's gone viral over the last few days. In fact, from February the 18th. And I'm going to ask our guest, Butch Witkowski, about that shortly. It seems there's been a big buzz at a place called Jackhead Reservation over in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Good grief, it can't be the wine either. So it seems that there has been a huge exercise going on with the military. Now, there is a military exercise going on. It's called Arctic Bison, and that was going on from the 13th to the 22nd of February. Now, everybody else is saying and banging the drums that there has actually been a photograph of a massive trench in the field, this is on Lake Winnipeg, and it's frozen over. And then at the end of this big trench, I don't know how long it is, but it looks like there's something made a great trench through, and then there's a heap of, we don't know what it is. It looks like a step pyramid without its cap, and there's no way to gauge how big that is. But anyway, it looks like it's something, and people are saying that people are not being allowed in or out of the reservation, that there's phone lines have been down, all this kind of thing. Now, we actually don't have any corroborating information about this, except it is a buzz over the internet, so you can check this out if you like. So who knows, maybe Canada has their own Roswell, or who knows, maybe it is Arctic Bison, maybe it is just a training exercise, and it's a training exercise to see that 110 or so folks on their snowmobiles can make it through a 300-mile wasteland of ice to sustain themselves. who knows, whatever that is. I did ask Grant Cameron, who is in that neck of the woods, of course, but he says they don't really seem to think it's anything other than a hoax, and even said that the person who sent the information about this happening actually had the word UFO in their email address, so maybe that, says it all there. I don't know. We can't absolutely say, but the military, which is the 38th Canadian Brigade Group, are the guys who are doing the exercise, and there's been a lot of movement there. There's been vehicles, some of those huge vehicles along there. So we'll just have to see. So we'll keep our eyes open on this, and I'll either report to you next week, or perhaps you can feed back to me and let me know if a UFO has landed there, which is what the rumour is, of course, and if not, then, next story. Well, and the next story is from Grant. He actually filled me in on this one again. Now, I hadn't heard news of this, though it is over the internet quite a lot, and again, you can check this out if you're interested. And this is some information coming from Jaime Maussan, who is a Mexican journalist. He's in Mexico City, has his own program on UFOs and all the rest of that, and he's allowed to treat it seriously. The program is treated seriously, and he has a lot of respect in the area. So there's at the National Auditorium on the 5th of May, there's going to be an event which is going to show, for once and for all, apparently, the truth that ET is here and has been on planet Earth for a while. Now, this has all come about because a couple of researchers who've done a lot of work on Roswell, that's Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, who've written lots about witnesses and what's been going on at the Roswell over the years, and they broke I think it's I've forgotten his first name, the Hout story, the deathbed confession of the guy who was he was the guy who did all the PR stuff, and he finally said on his deathbed, actually, it was real. Anyway, those guys came to possession of a couple of slides, Kodak slides, which they've sent over to Kodak, and Kodak apparently have confirmed that they were manufactured around the 1947 mark. I do know that back in those days, Kodak would produce a batch of a material over, and it would be the same for a decade. So I don't know if they can specify sort of 37 to 47 or 47 to 57. I don't know quite how that works, but that's what I understand anyway. So anyway, these slides have come from a box of photos that were found in 1989 by a lady who was clearing a house of, I don't know, the deceased friends or parents, and she then put these photos along with other material in her garage for another 10 years before she got to look at the photos. Now, there's been some water damage to the photos, but some of the photos show Dwight D. Eisenhower, Clark Gable, Bing Crosby, people of the era, that kind of thing, but stashed away to one side were these two slides wrapped separately, which appeared to show aliens, or an alien. I'm not quite sure if there's one or not more. And so that's when the people who found them and went on to find Don and Tom. So we will hear more about that on the 5th of May, it seems, and this may well be the smoking gun. Again, we're not sure. You can follow that on the internet, and if there's anything more to report, I don't think there will be for next week, but I will certainly let you know what happens with that. So, folks, I'm very excited and delighted to welcome as my guest this evening Butch Witkowski, who is a retired homicide police detective, and he is the director and founder of the UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania. And we're going to speak to him after his choice of song, which is great. Well, actually, it's a piece of music which comes from the film The Thing from Another World, which, of course, is absolutely apposite. So we'll be speaking to Butch after this. It was a black and white film made in 1951 with, of course, the theme of a crashed UFO in the ice with the USAF trying to find it in a frozen body. So we'll speak to Butch right after this. And don't you just love those incredible 1950s sounds? I tell you, it just definitely rattles the brain. Nothing soothing there. And that was apparently the only film score done by Dmitri Tiomkin. Oh, I'm not sure I know why, but anyway, welcome Butch. Welcome Butch Witkowski. I hope I've got your name correctly.
That's correct, Joanne. How are you?
I'm fine. And I just have to ask, what's the temperature like your neck of the woods?
Right now, 14 Fahrenheit.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to say I'm not too jealous.
I'm thinking of moving to Alaska. It's a lot warmer up there.
Yeah. Hey, so Butch, we had a pre-show chat earlier on, and I was really excited to hear some of the work that you've been doing. But I know you had your own sort of groundbreaking experience, which really put you on the road to looking into this whole area. And, you know, even as a policeman or a detective, I think it's amazing. I assume you might have been working back then, because it's a few years ago. And perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about what that was and how that saw things developing on the UFO research side.
Well, in 1989, my wife and I were living in Arizona and in Tucson, and we had some young fellows from the college come in and put some saguaro cactus on the property. And they were at it pretty much the whole day, and it was getting pretty warm. And about 7 o'clock they finished up, and it was still pretty warm. So my wife went and got iced tea for everybody, and we're standing out on the driveway just kind of shooting the breeze and looking at the beautiful cactus. And up above a mountain, which is a mountain that they have this huge A on it that the students have to paint every year when they come in as freshmen for the University of Arizona. Excuse me. And right above the mountain was a craft, best I can describe it, tubular, at least, I keep thinking about it all the time, but it still comes up at least 3 football fields in length, 7 stories high, burnt copper in color, just moving slowly up and down. There was no sound, there was no electronic, like watches and stuff, nothing like that was affected. And it just hovered there, and it rose up maybe another 1,500, 2,000 square feet and shot off like a bullet. So, we're all looking at each other, and everybody saw the same thing. My neighbor across the street, who was, at that time, he was head of federal prisons for the western United States, he was standing out front, he saw it. My neighbor aside, which is not close to the property, but, within a couple hundred feet, he saw it. So now we're all standing in the driveway going like, well, what the heck was this? And so I went in and called the sheriff's department. I called the news media. I called the local Air Force base, Davis-Monthan. I called the airport. Called the Tucson police. I called the highway patrol, and nobody had anything. Nobody saw anything. So I just kind of left it and put it out of my mind, thinking like, okay, then we were all delirious with the heat or something. I don't know what it was, but as time went on, I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I just started looking at it, finding anything I could find on UFOs, books, magazines, pretty much anything. Wasn't getting too far, but I was accumulating a lot of printed paper and books. And then I decided to join MUFON, and I was able to dig a little deeper into the past and existing cases and, pursue more on-site investigations, but my research was still lacking something. And I just wasn't getting I wasn't getting the answers I was looking for.
Yeah, if I can just say, Butch, just in case people don't know in the UK what MUFON is, it's a mutual UFO network, and it's pretty much a nationwide group, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so just
they've been around a long time. They've been around since '69. There's one other group older than they are. They've been around since the 50s, the Cleveland UFO group. But So I became a state section director with MUFON, an investigator with MUFON. I became a chief investigator with MUFON, a STAR team member, but just wasn't getting the information I wanted. I mean, I needed to go a little further than their rules and regulations allowed. So I started my group, the UFO Research Center in Pennsylvania, in 2009, and We have 12 chapters. We have one in England. We have one in Poland, and then we have 10 here in the United States in different states. It's a diverse background. A lot of them are very old researchers that, I don't mean old in age, but I mean all long-time researchers in different phenomenons of ufology, cryptozoology, the paranormal. I mean, we cover the whole gamut. And it's really worked out really well for us. We have 2 mobile units that are completely equipped, from everything from satellite communications, onboard computers, everything you would need to investigate any type of activity, whether it be ufology or paranormal or cryptozoology.
And what have you used those mainly for then, Butch, those vehicles? Is it sort of poltergeist activity, or have you been out sort of
we could respond to a UFO sighting, we could respond to a cryptozoology sighting, we could respond to a haunting, if you want to call it that, paranormal. Trucks are fully equipped. We have 2 of them. We have one in the eastern part of the state, which is the one that's parked out in front of my place now, and then we have one in the western part of the state. The only difference between the 2 is my unit has rappelling gear in, and the other unit has dive gear in, because that gentleman out there is a certified diver.
Oh, fantastic.
There is nothing that we have night vision, we have infrared cameras, we have studio-grade DVD cameras, just a lot of money. And we're a non-profit. We don't take donations. Everything's out of pocket.
Ask how you funded it, because that's that is a lot of dollars there.
Well, I've been getting equipment since 2007. So, when we see something or need something, it just gets bought and put in the truck.
Yeah.
The trucks have everything you can think of. I mean, they have canopies, there's chairs, there's tables, there's ladders, there's emergency lighting, there's emergency heat. I mean, I can go anywhere and stay for a week and not leave my van.
Well, I'm going to come on a field trip with you, Butch. A
lot of people want to do that.
Yeah, I bet.
It's just a group of multidisciplined investigators, and it's enhanced our fact finding like no other group that I'm aware of. We deal with a lot of other groups, and if they need help, we'll roll one of the units to them, or if they just need to search a database, or we'll help anybody out. It doesn't matter.
Fantastic. And you also produce a journal as well, don't you?
Yes, the Journal for Abnormal Abduction Research, which really was, in the past, back in 2009, it was called the Journal of Alien Abduction Research, which was done by Elaine Douglas. Elaine passed away last year. But before she passed away, a few months before she passed away, we had talked about regenerating that magazine. And I said, well, so we don't get it confused with yours, we'll change the name. We just took alien out and put abnormal, because it's all abnormal. And we started publishing that last year. This is our second year going into publishing. And what we have on there are articles from different researchers, case histories, general information for the abductees, how to get a hold of groups around the world that handle abductees, whether it be Free or Ammach or CERN, Airborne, they're all there, and contact information if somebody needs to contact them. Yeah. So that's working out real well, and we may expand it a little bit this year with more abduction stories from the past, just to get people, to realize that, this stuff really only started coming out in the 50s. I mean, a lot of people think that this is new, but not really. I mean, the abduction cases started in the 50s.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'd really like to talk about, because I haven't done that so far, and I've put up on the podcast page just missing persons, abductions, and human mutilation. So I was very interested to listen to, and the gentleman's name just escapes me. He's a retired policeman also, who began looking into the phenomenal number of missing persons in a lot of the state parks, and it is Again, I don't have the figures or anything in front of me.
Oh,
I
good.
was just remembering it.
Oh, you're talking about Dave Pallades.
I think I am. I listened.
Yeah, you are. David's research and mine, although they kind of parallel each other, David has stayed more to the parks and those types of locations, wooded canyons, mountain areas, where there's a great deal. My investigation pretty much covers what I started with when I started doing abduction research, and that is the absolute horrendous number of people that are missing every year.
Yeah, and can we talk about that, Butch? Because you've got some information about the stats on that, and I think that would be interesting for people to hear, just to get a handle on how big this is.
Okay. Here in the United States, we have the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, puts out what they call, through their NCIC statistics, which is the National Crime Information Center, and it's only done for the United States. It's not done for any other country. And what they do is every year they send out forms to every police department, sheriff's department, highway patrol. Any law enforcement agency in the country gets a stack of these forms. And on the forms, it'll have like, how many bicycles were stolen, how many rapes, how many robberies, how many murders, how many missing people, how many this, how many that, and with little explanations on the side. And that's how they compile every year the statistics for crime in the United States. So when I actually got into the abduction thing quite by accident, I was going to speak at a conference. I was going to speak about something else, and somebody backed out, and they asked me if I would speak about abductions, and I only had 4 weeks to go. So I said, okay, well, I know a little bit, but let me brush up on it, and I'll put something together. And while I'm putting it together, I'm wondering, well, just how many people can be missing? You know what I'm saying? This just didn't make sense that there was this big thing about missing people. But so I went into the National Crime Information Center, which is open to the public. And now they're always a year or two behind, okay? So when I did this, I could only get 2008 statistics, but I've upgraded it since. So in 2009, there were 778,000 missing persons reports filed with the FBI. Now, approximately 95% of those are found. About 75% are runaways under the age of 18 years, which are, Dad won't give me the car keys, I'm going to run away. About 20% are spousal abuse, murders, elderly walkaways, kidnappings, etc. But 5% are never found. 5%. They have no idea. There's no bodies found. There is no rhyme nor reason. There's just no trace of them. And that number came to 38,000. So I went back to 1991 when they first started publishing that, and the missing persons reports totaled 13,800,000. So using the same math over all those years, 5% or 693,000 are never found. No trace of them, man, woman, or child, is ever located, ever. So in 17 years, that's 40,795 people a year. So where are they?
Yeah, indeed.
With that number, you should be falling over bodies in your backyard.
Yeah.
But they're never found. I mean, those cases are never closed. They're just there. So I upgraded. I brought it up to date in 2012 when they made it available. 2012 when they made the last one available, and it's still between 4.7 and 5%. That's uncanny. That doesn't even make sense to me.
Well, it's very consistent as well, which is strange.
Now, can you imagine putting the U.S. numbers aside? That's only the U.S. again, and let's add into it Europe. Let's add into it Africa. Let's add into it Asia. The number has to be phenomenal. So where are all these people? Now, I'm sure that there are countries, they don't care who's missing and who's not. They don't care if a whole village disappears. But if they had to keep records, that number would be astronomical. It would be unbelievable. If we're getting those kind of numbers in the United States, imagine if all of Europe did the same thing, what those numbers would be. Or if the whole world did those, what the numbers would be. You'd be talking about the millions every year, in the millions every year.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
So that took me to pursue further, and I got into an area which I guess I'm the only researcher anymore. I think there's one in England that still does the mutilation cases. So I started looking at those, figuring, not that I wanted to, but it just seemed like the natural way to go. Cattle mutilations I was very familiar with, but when I was doing cattle mutilation research and cases, it turned out when I saw this human mutilation pop up, I went like, that doesn't make sense to me. But it did. And in the early 60s, there were a bunch of rumors that came out of human corpses being found with the same kind of wounds that are found on cattle mutilations. We've had those here, and you've had them in England. I know that for a fact.
I know we have as well.
And your military and our military and our police and your police are involved in it just as much as anybody else is. I mean, we find those all the time. But I guess the one that brought it really to the forefront was the Guada Paranga Dam case in Brazil in 1988. Because there we had not only the crime scene photographs of the body, but we had the autopsy report. Now, it was in Portuguese when I got it, so I had to have it translated. You don't want to do that too much. That's very expensive. But when we went over the autopsy report, it just, the basic stuff. Death was due to massive trauma. But here's the weird stuff. There was no sign of rigor or livor mortis. The time of death was placed between 40 to 72 hours. And this guy wasn't bloated. There was no noticeable amount of blood at the scene or in him. And the report kept mentioning the words vital reaction. Now, vital reaction is really simple to understand because it's the term vital reaction indicates a response of living body tissue to injury. So, in other words, if I would stick a penknife in your arm, you would instinctively pull away from it. Well, when you pull away, you cause a mark to go around it, like black and blue, okay, would surround it, or there'd be an abrasion or a tearing, because the person that just happened to is alive. Well, by definition, that can only occur during life, and therefore, it's pretty much an index of antemortem injury, so it happens while somebody is alive. It's very important in the forensic medicine end of investigations that this also establishes that the injury was inflicted before death, and it helps the forensic person doing the case to estimate the time or the infliction. Okay, if you stab somebody, well, let's not say somebody. Let's just say you stab a slab of beef that's laying on your kitchen table, and you slash it and you tear at it with the sharpest knife you got. The only thing you're going to have is a lot of slash marks and cut marks and puncture marks. There's not going to be any marks around that meat. It's going to be just like you laid it there. It's not going to be any black and blue, any reddish, anything. It's just going to be the cuts, because it can only be inflicted on a live person to get that vital reaction. With the slab, you get no vital reaction. So what it came down to was that all the damage that was done to this man, eyes removed, anal area cored out just like cattle, the puncture wounds, the missing muscles, all that stuff. He was alive when this happened.
Yeah.
So
that's what I understand.
Then I really got interested, and it's been something else. I mean, it's not like it just started happening then, back in '88. I mean, there's cases that go back. I guess the earliest case was 1956. Yeah, 56. New Mexico at a United States Air Force base, a Sergeant J.P. Lovett, along with a colonel, went out to retrieve some missile parts from a downrange chute at a test area. The sergeant started screaming. The colonel turned around just to see that something had the sergeant by the leg and was pulling it up like a rope, a tether of some type, into a craft that quickly shot off. He went back. They sent out a search party, and they couldn't find him. And a couple days later, they did find him, just a little bit from where he was taken, and the body was the same as a mutilated cow. Bliss, Idaho, they found a gentleman out in the middle of nowhere by himself, butchered the same way. You had one in New Zealand in 1994. Cairo, Egypt, 2005, a whole family was butchered like that. Every man, woman, child, dog, cat, chicken, whatever was in the house was done the same way. And they blamed a retarded man who lived close by, but had the IQ and the mannerisms of a 4-year-old. He couldn't tell you where he was if he was sitting in his own living room. They charged him with the murders of the families. I spoke to his lawyer a couple years back. She did get him off, but to this day, and this happened in 2005, that's 10 years ago, he is not allowed to leave his house without the company of one of his parents and a policeman, whether he's going to the mosque or whether he's going food shopping or whether he's just going for a walk. One of his parents and a police officer have to accompany him.
Unbelievable.
So, this stuff is, the case in England that I read about, or I'm trying to think of the investigator, but it was a whole family was lined up on a hill by their car, and they were skinned, perfectly skinned, not ripped and torn, surgically skinned. So,
what year was that? Do you remember?
I do not remember. I'm trying to think of the investigator's name, because he does have a YouTube thing on it about the whole case, and I can tell you in a second, but it really is an interesting case. And 2 years ago, I guess it's almost 2 years now, I had two English gentlemen contact me. They're archaeologists, and they were going through a church registry in some part of England, not close to London, but out in the country. And the English, they kept records of everything, and it was always in the church. And they were looking for information on something, and they came upon some stuff in some of the church records that said that a man had gone missing in the town and was found 24 hours later on a roof in the town with these strange puncture marks, and he was missing body parts. So they looked some more, and in the same town, a number of years later, now this is going back to the 16th, 17th century, they found the same thing of another gentleman who was on a farm and disappeared, and 48 hours later, no, he was a fortnight later, whatever fortnight is. Anyway, fortnight later, they find him on the roof of a shed-type building on the property, and he's full of puncture holes, and he is also dead with missing organs. So they said they weren't allowed to take photographs of the pages because that's the rules. You can't photograph the pages because of the flash hurting the paper and ink and all that stuff. And so we were corresponding back and forth, and they were going to another location and said they would get back to me. And the guy that has that on YouTube is Richard D. Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they didn't get back to me, and I started emailing them, and pretty soon their email address was no good. And I haven't heard from them since.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, maybe if you Skype me their names, I'll see if I can do a bit of research myself and let you know.
I checked the names. The names don't exist. I checked the I forget the name of the college or school in England. I checked with the school, and they didn't know them.
Oh.
Never heard of them.
Well, that's very bizarre. That is more than bizarre.
Well, not really. A lot that happens a lot in ufology, and especially if you're messing with the dark side of ufology, which human mutilation really is the dark side of ufology. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. If you do talk about it, they will come after you, whether it's your peers on the other side of the equation or, they'll just do anything they can. I would say anybody that wants to get involved in the investigation of human mutilations in England, get a very good barrister.
Yeah, Butch.
I know I had.
Butch. Butch, can I just ask you, the Brazilian guy?
Yeah.
You were talking before on our pre-show chat about seeing the brain, and didn't they remove the top of the head to check?
Yes,
the brain?
they did remove the skull cap.
Yeah, tell us about that.
And the brain was full of I'm going to call them mini hematomas. If somebody smacks you on the back of the head with a hammer and they take that off, there's going to be a big lump of blood clot, hematoma.
Yeah, sure.
A person that, let's say, would be slowly crushed in an accident, slowly, the trauma to the brain is horrendous. So what happens is all the small blood vessels start to break because of the pain and just the shock of being crushed to death and knowing that that's going to happen. And his whole brain was covered with that, small hematomas everywhere.
So that means that every single thing that was done to him, he was alive and conscious and aware at the time.
Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an animal case that matches that. There was a horse, a family pet on a farm, and I can't think of the horse's name right now because that wasn't the name of the horse. The name of the horse was given by the newspaper people. But anyway, the researchers, two investigators get there, and they're looking at this dead animal who has the same damage done to it as a cattle, jaw, removed, eyes out, the whole 9 yards, missing organs here and there. But the one researcher looks at the other one and he says, "Isn't this strange?" And he says, "Look at the face." So they're looking at the face of the horse. And the viscous fluid from the eye runs down the snout. Now the horse is on its side. If this happened while the horse was down, the viscous fluid would have ran off the side of the horse, the face. Yeah. It ran down, completely down the center of the snout. So the horse was standing up when this happened. It couldn't have been laying down.
Oh God, yeah.
So
I think
and then recently we've gotten cases out of England where they're finding sheep, which this has never happened here, not that we know of, but they're finding sheep with marks, holes behind the ear of the sheep, and the brain is missing. We have never had anything like that where the brain was taken. Now, when you look at the pictures of the sheep, the jaw part is there, the eye part is there, the cord out, the udders taken, all that stuff. But in the sheep, the brain is taken through these, I imagine, through these 3 holes behind the ear. We have never had that here.
So there must be some kind of incredible laser suction kind of device that...
Yeah, because, look, there's no doctor here in the United States that can make the kind of cuts that are found in these animals. We don't have that technology. I mean, even with a laser knife, a laser scalpel, one surgeon I talked to said, even if I had a template to put over there, it would never make that smooth a cut. And besides that, he says, look at this picture that I showed him. He said, if this was a human, the laser would leave a burning around the edge. He said, look at this. He said, it looks like a cookie cutter did it.
Yeah, that's true.
So he said, we can't do that. He said, that's impossible. We don't have anything. He said, there's no burning, yet there's a clean, unremarkable slice, and that's it. And he says, another thing, he said, when I showed him a bunch of pictures. He said, look at this cow. He said, now, cows have multiple stomachs. I said, yes. He said, now they just removed the udders. I said, yes. He said, look how clean that cut is, and they never touch the stomach. Never nicked it. He said, the stomach lays right alongside and on top of the udders. He said, how'd they do that? He said, I couldn't do that in surgery. He said, in surgery, he said, if I'm operating, say, on your wrist or something like that, he said, I know I'm going to nick something because what am I going to do? I'm not going to cut through it. He said, but I might nick it. Yeah. He said, they never touched those stomachs. And we started looking at different cows that were taken where udders were removed. Not one stomach was touched.
Wow.
There's nothing found at the scene. There's no tracks in the snow. There's no blood in the bodies. There's no.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention. The blood element. That there seems to be not one drop of blood.
Nope.
Anywhere.
You might see a little blood around the wound itself.
Right. But
You probably bleed more if you'd scratch yourself.
Yeah.
And when there's a couple that were taken in for necropsies, the livers and heart were like mush, and they didn't dry up. They just stayed that way.
Oh, really?
They had high doses in the blood, what little blood they could find in the liver and the heart of ammonia. So it's very strange. It's very hard to investigate because nobody wants to talk about it. And it's really a loss because these animals are expensive, and you got a farmer out there who's got maybe 10 or 15, 20 cows, and he loses 2 or 3 a year. The insurance is only going to pay for the first one. They're not going to keep paying. And when you're looking at $2,500 to $3,500, $4,500 for an animal like that, that's crazy. And police aren't involved in it. They don't even want to get involved. There were a couple over time. Chuck Zukowski in Colorado, he does it, and there are a couple others out there, but not many. Maybe a handful.
Okay, so we've got a question, Butch, just from the chat room there, and they're just asking if you had to speculate, what do you think the reason is that this may be happening? Any ideas?
There have been so many ideas floated over time that they need certain parts of the animal to feed themselves, or they need certain parts of the animal for experimentation. It's the government. I kind of rule out the government because, number one, if the government wanted to do this, they could go buy a cattle ranch with the money we spend and do it to their own cattle. These are done in very remote areas. There are no military bases around. We've had reports of, I saw a black helicopter. Well, it's the same guy that said he saw a flying saucer. So the fact that the way the body is found and they all have the same thing taken, I lean more toward they need those parts for something, whether it's something to inoculate them maybe against our diseases, or maybe it's something that they absolutely need to survive, those certain parts, but it's the same parts. Take the same things, the eyes, the lower jaw, the anal area. They never touch the intestines. Never. Intestines are never touched. They'll core out the anal area, and the sexual organs are taken. So are they using these parts for experiments? Now, granted, we haven't seen many lately. It seems to run in spurts. Like you'll have 4 or 5 years there where they're all over the place, and then there's a 2 or 3 year period, 4 year period, like we're in right now, where they're very sparse. But for the reason they come, could be anybody's.
Yeah. The family.
But why human?
Yeah, why human indeed. But the family that was with the women, what do they take of the women? Do they take the womb, the uterus? Do they actually go and remove the tubes? Yeah. Do we know?
Uterus, sexual organs, males, the one male, the guy in Brazil, they removed the prostrate through the urethra gland. How did they do that? How did they do that? I haven't found a doctor yet that can answer me that. My brother-in-law's a doctor, and he said, I couldn't do that, and I don't know anybody that could do that. He said, other ways, he said, but not that way.
Yeah. Another question, Butch, just said, is there a ratio between the amount of humans to animals taken? Is it more animals than humans?
Many more animals than human. Human cases that we can find, which, again, what we can find, totals maybe 10 or 15, 20 at the most. And some of those we just can't get any information on at all. I mean, it was either something that happened during the war, one of the wars, or it was something that happened on a military installation, and getting that information is just not going to happen.
Hey, Butch, tell us about I heard you speak about, was it Vietnam?
That was the Vietnam case where that's one of the cases we cannot find any information on.
Okay.
And the way the story went was a gentleman who was a naval combat photographer in Vietnam was asked to go out on a search party with to find a downed B-52 bomber in the jungle. And he went along. And now, and these are his words. There's no official record, and we could not even find an official record of a B-52 down. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
No, of course.
And he gets there, and he says that he sees the plane. The plane doesn't look like it was knocked down, shot down, or crashed. It looks like it was just set in the jungle, just set down. He said, which is impossible. And they went on board, and the crew of the B-52 was butchered just like cattle. So his camera was taken, confiscated immediately, even though he took pictures.
Okay.
He was put back on a helicopter and told to sit there and not move. And then the group that took him out there destroyed the plane.
So these guys, the crew, how many were there?
Crew of B-52, I believe, is 6.
Okay.
6 or 7.
Were they still strapped in their seats, or?
Oh, yeah, every one of them strapped in. Yep.
Oh, wow. I know there's another case, a guy, is it Tom Sees or Tom Lees? I'm not quite sure if I got the name right there.
Todd Cease, that's a case we've been working on now. This is our 6th year.
Beg your pardon. Yeah, okay. How about that's another amazing case.
Okay, the Todd Cease case, gentleman 39 years old, leaves his house, is last seen alive at his home at 1 o'clock in the morning. He tells his wife at 5 o'clock that he's going out to spot pre-season deer. And he puts on his little camouflage, this happens in August, so he puts on his little camouflage suit, not heavy, just a lightweight thing, jumps on his ATV, four-wheeler, and takes off for the Northumberland Ridge, which is right behind his home. Tells her that he'll be home at his usual time, which was normally around noon. Well, 2 o'clock comes, and he doesn't show up, so she calls police. Police start to get the search teams together, and there's like 200 searchers out on the property and the mountain, including family members who knew where he goes. And to make a really long story short, they look for him all that day, and they have, like I said, 200 searchers. They have cadaver dogs. They have search dogs. They have a diver dive the pond at his home. They find the four-wheeler 1 mile from the house, no keys, just parked on the mountain there. We're still trying to decipher information on, there was one boot in a tree. They never found the other boot, so when it got too dark, and this mountain is really heavy wooded area, that part of Pennsylvania, and it's a very well-known place for rattlesnakes, timber rattlesnakes. So nobody wanted to go stomping around in the dark. So they called it down for that night. They started fresh in the morning and searched the whole mountain, retrieved the ATV, got that back to the house, and around about 10 of 8 in the evening, somebody sees something in the brush, heavy brush under a tree, and they cut through the brush. They get there, and it's the body of Todd Cease. The coroner says he was dead for 24 to 40 hours, and if that's a fact, I have the first documented case of a real zombie, because they said he died of a cocaine overdose, and the amount of cocaine, degraded cocaine that was in his body, he probably would have, by all the forensic people and doctors I talked to and drug people I talked to, he would have taken about 5 steps and been dead.
Okay.
Now, you got to remember, there are 200 people on this mountain. The mountain's on this ridge is only 6 square miles. They didn't hear him. He didn't hear them. How did he get to where he was? Because where they found him was 150 feet behind his house. I'm sorry, 150 yards.
Yeah.
So how did he get from 1 mile away with that amount of cocaine in him to his house?
And what was the condition of his body?
It gets better. The day before, there's a UFO report, or the day of, rather, of some fishermen, which the river isn't very far from his property, maybe half a mile, who say that they see somebody being pulled up in their underwear into a light, into a craft above a power line, which was not really heavily reported, until you realize that when he's found in his shorts and a T-shirt, no boots, just socks. So if somebody looking at somebody being pulled up into a light, it would look like he was in his underwear.
Right. My God.
We can find no information on this gentleman. Basic information. Name, date of birth, date of death. We know where he's buried. The body was taken from the scene and doesn't arrive at the hospital for autopsy for 14 hours, so where was that at? Every death investigation I was involved in, the body left me or the coroner, and it went to the hospital or whoever was doing the forensic autopsy. The body itself was in advanced stages of decomposition.
Oh, it was.
How'd that happen?
And was this like a human mutilation case as well?
He wasn't mutilated, no. He was all scratched and cut up and bruised up and everything like that, but the biggest mark on him was the top of his head on the right side, right temporal lobe. There was a pretty good-sized gash up there, but other than that, his body was unremarkable. Heart, liver, lungs, no signs of cancer, all this stuff was fine.
And what did the family say about, did this guy have a cocaine habit or something?
No, the family doesn't talk about this.
All right.
Nobody talks about it. Everything we've gotten purely by mistake. And when I say that, one of the groups that's involved with us, and it's our group, we have 4 investigators that work cold cases. Yeah. I don't tell people who they are. Nobody knows who they are. And they just get their assignment and they go after it. So, like if I would have went to people that we questioned and said, "Hey, I'm Butch from UFORCOP," they would have said, "Yeah, have a nice day, goodbye." But these guys, through Facebook, Twitter, going to parties, hanging around certain areas, got a lot of information.
Okay.
And when we put all that information together, then we went to the coroner and we said that we would really like to get a copy of the autopsy report and the toxicology report, to which he said, no way, ever, would that be given out. Then one of my guys offered him money, and he gave it to us, which is totally illegal, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I'd have guessed that. Okay. So
that's when he stopped talking to us. I don't know why. But it's a very strange case. We can find nothing on this. We know what he did for a living. We know where he lived. We know his birth and date and death, and we know family members. But no high school records, no military records, no driver's license, no fishing license, no hunting license. And he was a truck driver, a bread truck driver. No military record, well, we did find his arrest record. He had a speeding ticket 3 years prior to his death. That was it. No high school records. He was very involved with a local Little League baseball team. And when we talked to one of those members who has been with the team for many, many, many years and knew him very, very well, said if we had an inkling that he was doing any kind of a drug, he would have never got within 100 yards of these kids. So I said, so you're telling me that he never used drugs? He says, never. He said that guy's whole addiction in his life was Mountain Dew soda. He said every time you saw him, he had a Mountain Dew. And if you look at a picture of his Gravesite, there's an empty can of Mountain Dew.
Oh, right.
Now, if he was a drug dealer, I would expect there'd be a gun and some cash and some coke laying there, but no. It just, the whole story stinks. The police that were handling it or said they were handling it lied to us. They weren't the ones that handled it. It was handled by state police. The coroner that said he did the autopsy, he did not do the autopsy. It was done by a lady doctor. And nobody's talking. Out of the 200 searchers, and even the fire department's records are missing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
God. So the family.
He's pretty much. I guess the best way to put it is, he's pretty much been erased. There's only one group that can erase you. We all know who that is. My Uncle Sam. There are no records of this guy. I mean, in normal, even when you go under the in the United States, they have we have Social Security, and they have a Social Security death index, and all that information goes in there when you die, so that they don't keep sending you checks.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm retired, so I get those checks. So I think I'm going to hang around a long time and collect. But I went into the Social Security death index, and I looked at my father, who died in 1970. Now, the information on that page gave my father's name, full name, date of birth, wife's name, children's names, their date of birth, date they got married, what high school he went to, when he graduated, when he went into the military, when he came out of the military, where he worked, where we lived, phone numbers. Everything is there. It's like it's like an ancestry site. You know what I get when I go to his? I get his name, birth date, death date, no family records found. He was married with kids. Big family.
And will the family just not speak? Have they? Do they just stonewall you?
No. Nope. Not a word.
Did you get to speak to them at all, or have they never spoken to you?
They. What I was giving a talk on that case in 2010, and I got an email from I believe it's I know it is. It's a niece who really went after me and said, "How dare you?" Blah 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 blah. And I sent her an email back and I said, "I'm not saying he was taken by UFO. I said I'm just going to talk about the case, what we know." I said, "Is there something you know that I should know that you don't want to tell me?" And she sent me back an apology and she said, "No, I'm sorry." She said, "I thought you were going to say he was abducted by aliens." I said, "No." I said, "I'm basically reading off a report from the newspapers, which is all I had back then, and another researcher out in Washington State." I said, "which has been all over the internet for years." I said, "But to me, it's just a strange case, and I think, if however the guy died, the truth deserves to be told." I mean, if this was a drug-dealing maniac, it's just not there. Everybody liked him. We found nobody that didn't like him. He was well known in the community. He was really involved with hunting and fishing, and the Little League baseball team for the kids. Yeah. Most of his life. There's no indication that this guy would overdose on cocaine. That amount of cocaine, anyway.
Is that something you've come across before, Butch, where there, is, let's call it an anomalous, unexplained, inexplicable death in reference to the person, where there has been anomalous events like this? No. This is 1 in 100 million. It makes no sense. I started out, I had a little half-inch binder, 3-ring binder. That's all. And now I have a 6-inch binder that's full. And everything that we have gotten, no matter who we talk to, no matter what information we got, it's on their letterhead. It was sent to us. We have the emails. We talked to nobody on the phone about it. Everything is on paper. Right. That's the way the case has been held from day one. Because, with a case like this, if somebody says, "Well, I didn't talk to him on the phone," or "He never talked to me," or "He's lying," or "She's lying," or whatever. Yeah. No, I have everything they said on paper, and they sent it to me, or we sent it to them. The toxicology report, I have, the autopsy report. All this stuff we have in our possession, and just not here, but it's
I mean, I have a copy here, but we have a couple copies out there just in case I decide to, or undecidedly disappear one day.
Yeah, right. So is that the only case you have an autopsy report of? Have you been able to get any others of?
No, I have the one from Brazil. I have that autopsy report also.
You did have that one. Oh, right. Okay. Again, I know that's a different case because that's a human mutilation, and this is clearly, in my view, an abduction. I'll tell you something interesting, Butch. This is just sharing a bit of a story of a guy I've been working with on his story, and this is a guy who's an ex-soldier who only had a memory download at 43. Some of the gang here will know who I'm speaking about, a guy called Mike Smith. And just to tell you this tiny little vignette of an abduction experience which he remembered when he was 43, but at the time it happened, his memory was completely wiped afterwards. But he basically was parked up. He was a driver, interestingly enough, and he'd just been delivering, got a 2-day delivery to do, but he was sleeping overnight in the cab, finishing a cigarette, all the rest of that. And there were some cows in the field, and he noticed all these lights, and he thought it was the lights of the city he was overlooking. And he saw this cow going into the air and making a heck of a noise. He said it was a bit like a screaming horse rather than anything else. That's just how he described it. And he didn't think anything of it. He thought that maybe, because he doesn't know anything about farming, that a farmer was out there because it was pitch black, apart from these odd lights, lifting a cow somewhere. I mean, that's just what he thought. Anyway, so he didn't think any more about that until he lit a match for a cigarette when everything went black, and then he was taken through the windshield up into the craft, taken to put onto an examining table where he looked over to his left and saw an archway where there was the cow, and the cow was clearly dead. And E.T., the Greys, were in the act of pushing it out, or perhaps they weren't using their hands, but then anyway, it was being evicted from where it was, and obviously it was going to land outside. And he thought, oh God, it's me next, I'm going to die. And this Grey came up to him, put his hand on his chest and said, no, you're human. So scroll forward after the incident, he then comes back, he's outside the van, and the only reason he would get outside of the van, he's got no memory now, is to have a pee. So he thinks he's going to have a pee because that's why he's outside the van. So he goes to the back of the van and sees the cow with all the usual cawing out. But then he freaks out and thinks, oh my God, they're going to think I killed a cow. And so he goes off, thinks nothing more of it, because then his memory is completely gone.
Wow.
How amazing is that? But that's the first case I've ever heard of anybody actually witnessing one, because of course at the time not only did he not remember, but when he did have the memory, as he's remembering back, he didn't know that he was seeing a cow being abducted. Now he knows.
Now, and there have been cattle found in very remote areas. Again, these are all found in remote areas, with the exception, I think, of maybe a handful of that were found in the actual barnyard or on a close family property. But there have been some found where they've been dropped from a great height, and pretty much every bone in their body's broken, and they left an indentation in the ground. There are cases where cattle were found done in 5, 6, 8 years ago, and no grass grows in the. I mean, you can see the outline of the cow in the grass. No grass will grow there, and it's a long time. So there's something, whether they're being irradiated or injected, or just their environment that they're in when they're taken, or whether it happens on the ground or they're taken up into a craft or whatever. Yeah, just something we work on all the time. And I tell researchers, look, if you're going to do this stuff, if you're going to do the research, don't walk out with a pencil and paper and a ruler and a pair of binoculars and a flashlight. That's not going to get you anywhere. Okay, those are basic things that you should carry anyway. You should have a decent camera. You should have evidence bags. A baggie will do. A Ziploc bag from your grocery store. You should have rubber gloves. You shouldn't touch anything if you're going to take evidence. Tweezers. You can get it at any shop. You can get tweezers. Get long-handled tweezers. Get a marking pen to mark the time and date, and everything has to be followed. The rules of evidence, I don't care if it's here or if it be in England or if it be in China, the rules of evidence are the same. evidence needs to be taken properly, and it needs to be protected. So, you don't hand the specimen over to your buddy who just got done eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and stuck his hand in there to see what you got. You just ruined it. It's done. So anything that's found, whether it's a piece of metal or something from a mutilated cow or sheep or whatever, burned grass or something that just doesn't look... The stuff that you look for is the stuff that's sticking right out in front of you, but you just don't pay attention. Like, you're looking at nice green grass, and all of a sudden you see this one little patch over there that's burned. And then when you go over and look at it, you see another little patch. Pretty soon you got a tripod where something possibly could have landed, or the depth has pushed down the earth, so you need to measure that. So there are bits of equipment that you need. If people go on our website and go to UFORCOP website, even on Facebook, it's on the UFORCOP site. You can see the type of equipment that we use and that we have in our vans. And I'm not saying to go out and spend $30,000 on equipment, but a lot of the stuff you can get off of eBay, you can get at secondhand stores. Don't go out and buy a $5,000 pair of Zeiss Icon Leica binoculars when you can get the same binoculars for like $20. Not the same brand, but the same size, and a decent camera. A lot of our stuff is all of our cameras and our laptops and our computers are all military grade. We buy nothing but Panasonic Tough Books, only because if I'm out and I take my little pad here or my Galaxy Tab and it's cold, well, it's not going to start up. It's too cold. These things have a heater in them. They preheat before they start. So very expensive, but you can find them on eBay. You don't need to buy the newest of anything. Stuff that's 3, 4, 5 years old works fine, works great. It's got internet connection, it's got everything. But that's where a lot of researchers go wrong. They think that it's just, go out and look, take a picture, and go home. No, you really need to go out and really look. Take your time. Look at the environment. Look what's around you. What was seen by who, when. Document everything, no matter how trivial it is. And everybody seems to think that, at least most researchers I've seen, it's like a picnic. We're going out for a walk. That's nonsense. You should go out there with one thing in your mind, one thing only. Can you find or understand and prove to yourself that something actually happened? In other words, can you prove it forensically? Word of mouth. Stories are great. I've heard thousands of stories. I've had stuff sent to me that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Evidence. I'm looking at it like, looks like a piece of old liver, and they got it wrapped up in a baggie, and, the thing stinks and whatever, and goodbye. We have a microscope in our truck. So get a little, go to the library, pick up a book on forensic science or forensic investigation or crime scene investigation. Those are the rules you should follow. Don't follow something off of the internet, because 9 chances out of 10 you're talking to somebody who wouldn't know or find his butt with both hands. So you want to look at everything, no matter how stupid it looks to you or how dumb. That may be your key piece of evidence.
Yeah. Butch, I just wanted to ask you, what year, I forgot, I don't know if you said, what year was the Todd Seas case?
2002.
2002, yeah. And the Brazil case, was that late 80s? I'm just trying to remember now.
1988.
1988, okay, all right. Yeah, because I and the Egyptian case, that's a really fascinating one. I hadn't heard about that one. And again, this is absolutely, fascinating stuff. And it just leaves me, we don't know what's going on in different countries. And you said you have a researcher in Poland. What is the situation in Poland? Is there as much going on as any other country?
He is a camera guy, a photographer, and he's gotten some great shots of stuff flying over Poland. That's really kind of a very strange area if you go back in the history of Polish ufology. It's been around a long time because, of course, in Poland at all the camps, you had the Wunderwaffen, which was the Nazi experimental group that put together, the jet planes, the V2, the V1, the stuff that was tearing up London. They made the America bomber. All this stuff was developed in those areas of Peenemünde and around there, and in Poland, those camps. Yeah. And they have another. Matter of fact, there's really great books out by a guy named. He's no relation to me, by the way. A guy named Igor Witkowski, same spelling, and he's an aerospace author and follows way back all the way up to present. And he has done some fantastic research stuff. What they found underground bases that are still there and they're preserved. And you got this, like the one place he said, it was very strange because this was pretty much open area. He said it wasn't closed off or fenced in or anything. But he said, when we get down to the hall, you'll see why nobody ever tried to come in here. And when you get to the end of the hall, there's 2 machine gun emplacements, and they're still there. The machine guns are still mounted. So
really?
There was no way you were going to get through this hallway alive. That was a fact. And they found just different machinery that didn't make sense. They found in one Polish town, in an old school, I believe it was an old school or an old hotel, they found an area on the second or third floor where the Nazis were actually doing the atmospheric test using captives, from the camps, and just taking them to atmospheres where they couldn't live, but to see how high they could go. And when they found more research and paperwork on that stuff, they were really looking at stuff in outer space. How long would a person live in a zero environment? This stuff they were doing this from the 30s, early 30s on. So as far as if, they were so well advanced, they were so far advanced, had things just gone a little bit the other way, we'd all be eating spritzel tonight.
Indeed. Well, I hadn't heard of Igor Witkowski, so I'm going to check him out. And
yeah, there's a website for him. It's IGOR, and the same spelling as my name, WITKOWSKI. He has a couple books out. He's got a bunch of YouTube stuff out there, which people can view. Matter of fact, I think he does a whole 2 segments or 3 segments on those particular camps and sites that they found where the experiments were conducted. And he does Peenemünde. He does a couple YouTubes on the Wunderwaffen and what they had in mind and planning for everybody else.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, I think you could do with a little break, and I think we will, if Vin is ready with our song, we'll have a 2 or 3 minutes cup of tea break, and we'll come right back after our UFO song. And I'm not quite sure who it's by, but I'll see if I can find out more information, because what I've got written down I'm not sure of. So anyway, then if we can hit it with the UFO song, we'll be right back with Butch Witkowski after that.
Turned off my television when
And there we go. And it was, in fact, well, I think it was by Michael. Now, I don't know how to say this properly, but it's Wisniewski. Now, I'm not sure if he's the actual artist, but he's certainly the guy who put it up. And if you want to have a look at that, it's just 4 minutes 11. It's really a great little video, and it's really entertaining. Got some great UFO footage and stuff on it. So, anyway, there you go. So, and if you find out that it's by somebody else, let me know. All right, so we're back with Butch Witkowski from Pennsylvania, all the way, Pennsylvania. So, Butch, tell us what else you've been working on. I know we've spoken about the human mutilation and the animal mutilation. I don't know if you have a lot going, ongoing with the animal mutilation stuff, but I'd be very interested now to speak a bit more, perhaps, about the abduction cases, as you say, abnormal abduction cases, because nothing is normal about this.
Well, the cases, not too long ago, I try to keep my database updated a lot, and I just, for giggles, went into it and just to see how many cases in the last so many years. And then I noticed that just in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, there has been an increase of cases, reported cases, of like 10%. So I sent an email off to Dr. David Jacobs, who lives in Philadelphia, about an hour from me, and asked him if he saw an increase over the past year or so in cases that he receives. And he sent me back an email 2 days later. He said, yeah, he says, I just went through my stuff, and he said, you're right. He said, there's been a pretty good-sized increase over the past year or so. So I don't understand what is causing the increase, whether it's just people becoming more knowledgeable of what they may have gone through, or they are actually new reports.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I do think that I've heard more as well, but I'm getting much more complex cases as well. Some are extremely complex. That it's as you was referring to before, the usual, levitated off the bed, taken on board the ship, and then return a few hours missing time kind of thing. It's that as well, which is quite enough. But now it's getting a lot more. I'm hearing very unusual things, not a lot, where people are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and the fact that this is a holographic universe. And this one case I'm thinking of is a new case, and they're talking about their life changing in the last 4 years, where they were taken and where they have been siphoned off into a clone body. Their body's been exposed of, killed off, and they are aware of being in this AI holographic world. Now, this is a brand new case, so I haven't really had an opportunity to look further into it, and communication's not easy. But this is completely off the charts for me. I haven't heard anything remotely like this. I've heard of the concepts of AI and the creation of a holographic universe, and a bit. They were referencing the Smith character, as in the Matrix trilogy.
Mm-hmm. I picked up on that a few years ago, right after the movie The Matrix came out. Then you started seeing reports, not so much ours, but others in our group, other researchers in our group, were getting reports similar to the Matrix scenario. And then when the AI stuff started popping up, which was relatively recent, about a year ago, when Professor Stephen Hawking said that, look, this is stuff you should stay away from, it's dangerous. And then other people started saying the same thing. Then you started seeing abduction cases coming up where people were mentioning their brain was replaced, or they're living in another dimension, and the body that we're speaking to now is actually artificial intelligence, and it just goes on and on and on. So I think there has to be a lot more evidence, and I'm just one of those guys that I need to see the evidence telling me a good story. You should start it with, in a galaxy far, far away. But I want to hear, with me and the group, it's a search for the truth. No matter what we come up with, we're going to tell it like it is. If it's a hoax, I'll call it a hoax, and I'll defy you to say that it's not a hoax. First thing out of my mouth from the very beginning was, if I say anything wrong or the group comes up with the wrong conclusion, you show us the evidence, put that on our website, and apologize and correct it.
Yeah.
Of all the cases we've done, and there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I have never gotten one of those emails or a phone call.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what I'd like you to just talk about, and that is again just came up in our pre-show chat, and that was about getting a database together of alien abduction.
Oh yeah, well that just seems to be an impossibility. Like I said to you before, there was a lady in Quebec who just retired from government service, which that's what she did for a living for many years, to set up databases. And she called me, and we got to talk for a while, and she said she would like to set up, not that she was experienced or anything, she just was looking, and she said, I found no databases for abductions. She said, I found them for Bigfoot. She said, I found them for cryptozoology. I found them for ufology. She said, paranormal ghosts. I found all of them. She said, I could not find anything for abduction. And she was asking me if I had one or if I knew of one. And I said, no, I never heard of one. And she said, well, I'm going to try and put one together. So after 6 months of trying, I get an email, call me. So I called her, and she said, it's impossible. She said, it's just impossible. She said, nobody wants to talk about it. The cases are kept close to the vest. They're random. They're all over the place. Some people say, well, my great-great-great-grandfather was abducted back in 1792, and then his father and his father and the whole family all the way up to me today. They don't know who they are. They can't even name them, but they've all been abducted. It's a long line of succession there. And she said, that's impossible to track. I said, you'd never find that out. That's impossible. And she said, there's just too many cases, and she said, you really can't start calling people because the cases that are presented don't have any names in. Nobody wants their name out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and that's the same thing with ufology. I get some great cases and great photographs, and no name, I may have an email address, and I'll get a hold of them and say, I'm not going to give your name out or anything. Can we discuss it further? So you have that trust factor where we're not going to give their name out or where they live. I'll make a fictitious town close by, but I'm not going to give out their name or their address or their phone number or their email. And that's a lot of cases like that. And it all boils down to the giggle factor. They don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to be made fun of. They don't want to lose their job. And people have been fired over that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a fellow, it wasn't my case. It was one of the guys who worked for me, one of his cases, when I was with MUFON. And it got back. Somebody recognized something in the thing that was put on the MUFON site, and he got fired. Right. His boss said, I don't want lunatics running around here, and you're done. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
database is possible.
Yeah. Well, that I think that was just really interesting because this was something that a professional retired lady had done, a lot of her working life. And if she can't do it, then nobody can do it.
And that's how I looked at it. If this lady couldn't get it to go, there's nobody going to get it to go. I mean, you can make up a database of numbers. You can make up a database of locations, if they're factual. You can make up a database of what happened. You can categorize, how they were taken, when they were taken, who took them, what they saw. You can do that kind of thing, but that's not really telling you anything. It's not telling you what took place and then again, somebody could say, well, this took place in New Jersey when it actually took place in New York. So it's not factual. So, it's just like saying I have a case here in Pennsylvania, but I'm going to say that it actually took place in London. It makes no sense. Why would you do that? So putting together a database for abductions is just...
Yeah.
I don't ever see that happening no more than I see government disclosure on UFOs.
No, well, let's see what May the 5th brings up. Who knows what Jaime Maussan will have for us.
There have been, I went to the X Factor conference in Washington, D.C. in 2009.
Oh, right.
It was all about disclosure. And they said they were on the brink. It was a matter of months. That was 2009. It's 2015. They're still saying the same thing. It's on the brink. Mm. I want to tell you something. The government's only going to I don't care what government it is. The government is only going to tell you what they want you to know. Period. They're not going to break down cases. They're not going to say Roswell was real. They're not going to say Rendlesham was real. They're just not going to do it. You know why? Because it's going to say to the whole world, we've been lying to you for 50 plus years, but now you got to believe us. Nobody in their right mind, unless they're drunk, is going to say, okay, I believe you. So
yeah.
it's up to people like yourself, myself, my people, and all those researchers over in England and in the United States and other countries. It's up to us to find the truth, get that truth together, prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt with all the documentation and everything else we need, and don't take it to the government. Just put it out to the public, and the public will take it from there. And that's it. And just like that movie that you played the soundtrack from, I always said I must have watched that movie 8 million times or something like that. and I still think that's the way it's going to happen. It's going to be one of two things: either like the movie where it's found in the ice somewhere, or by accident, or it's going to land in the middle of some farmer's field, broke down, and the farmer's going to be smart enough to make a call to the newspapers first before he goes out.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We'll soon see. I know you do all kinds of investigation. It's not just the abduction cases, but you also do things like cryptozoology and, I guess all kinds of phenomena. Is there anything going on in the cryptozoology side in Pennsylvania?
Funny you should mention that. Yes, there is. I got a report a couple months ago of a gentleman, a retired airline pilot, went to a state game lands to walk his 2 Weimaraner dogs, and he's been hunting that area since he was a child, lives in the area, and they're walking up, we call them a fire trail. It's just a little wider than a walking trail so fire equipment can get into a forest fire if needed. Oh. And he's walking up the fire trail, and the dogs go crazy. They just go absolutely out of their minds, and he said they're very docile dogs. They never do anything like that. They're clawing at the ground. They're actually digging holes in the ground, trying to break away from him. And he says he sees nothing. He said there's nothing there. And he's trying to calm down the dogs, and dogs are getting worse. I mean, they're growling and snarling and ripping at the ground. They're really losing it. And he said out of the right-hand side of the woods on both sides, heavily wooded area, he said steps this creature. And I'm going to use that word because that's the word he used. And he describes it. And he said, it looks like a man. It's not a Bigfoot. He said, I've seen pictures of Bigfoot. He said, this didn't look anything like Bigfoot. He said it was a man, muscular in build, short black or short dark brown hair covering its body. And he said the thing that I focused on right away was it had a snout, okay? And when he says a snout, he said not like a wolf or a dog. He said more like maybe a pug or a small English bulldog or French bulldog, small snout.
Okay. Yeah.
He said it never looked at him, never looked at the dogs, who are now out of their minds. He said, I'm doing all I can do to hold them back, and he said, I weigh 200 pounds. He said it never looks at us, it never looks at the dogs. The dogs are right on it. I mean, they want to get to it as bad as they can. They rip it to shreds or whatever they want to do, and it walks in the other side, and he can't see it anymore. So he gets the dogs calmed down enough, he gets back to his truck, puts the dogs back in the truck, retrieves a handgun from his truck, goes back up the trail. He can see where the dogs were, so he knows where the creature came out. So he walks into the right side where it came out. He sees nothing. He walks into the left side where it went in, and he sees nothing. So he sends me a drawing that he found on the internet. He said, I've doctored this a little bit, but this is pretty close to what I saw. And it doesn't look anything like Bigfoot. It just looks like a muscular guy with hair and a snout, a small snout. And no protruding ears, no tail, none of that stuff. Just looks like
Was this a big person? I mean, very tall?
He figured about 7 to 8 foot.
Oh, yeah, that's tall. Yeah.
Now, he said, I saw no footprints from one side to the other. The ground wasn't hard, but it wasn't soft either. But he said, something that tall and heavy would have left something in the dirt, and there was nothing. So he goes back and tells a bunch of his buddies, and they decide they're going to go out the next day, and they're armed to the teeth. They got high-powered rifles, the whole night, 3 of them. They go to the same spot. He knows exactly where it is because the hole's still there where the dogs dug the 2 holes. They walk into the right side. They go in 150, 100 feet, something like that. They see nothing. They go in the other side, again, about half that distance, and they all stop. And they all look at each other, and he said, we all had the same feeling. We need to get out of here, and we need to get out of here right this minute. And they left. And he said, I want to tell you something, Butch. He said, I don't know you. I'll probably never meet you in my life. He said, but I will never, ever, ever go into those woods again. He said, I will never go in that area again. So I got a hold of some researchers that do that type of cryptozoology work up in the area, and they said, oh, yeah, that's happened. That's happened here a couple times where we had people come to hunt with us, Bigfoot hunting or research, and he said they came out of the woods. One guy came running out of the woods. He was white as a ghost, and we haven't seen him since. And he said another time we had a group of a couple people came with us, and they just said, no, we're not going in there anymore. So what they're seeing or what they're feeling or what they think they're seeing is unknown. But we'll be going up there at the end of April when the weather breaks and the trees are still not quite foliated. And we're going to park that truck, one of the vans, and we're going to set up and we're going to put out everything we got and see what we can get.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. And I don't know, when this guy saw it, was it quite close to him?
About 15, 20 feet at the most.
Oh, my Lord, wow. That is close.
But he said it never even looked at him, like he was never there. I mean, you would think with 2 snarling, Weimarana's a big dog.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
you got 2 of those ripping and tearing to get to you. You would think whatever would look at it, but he said it never did. He said it just walked out. He said didn't speed up or anything, same pace, out one side, cross the road, in the other, like we weren't even there. So I talked to one researcher about that, because one of the things that has cropped up, and I'm not really a Bigfoot guy. I'm one of those that, like I said, I got to see it to believe it, or evidence. And and I said to this guy, I said, look, a lot of this I've read and heard over the last maybe year and a half, 2 years the most, about how the reason that these Bigfoot researchers aren't finding Bigfoot is because they are a paranormal entity. They are multidimensional.
Yes, glad you said that.
Or they're interdimensional, or they're associated with UFOs. Now, again, you need to prove that. I mean, saying it's very easy. I mean, if my wife said, go find the car keys, and I can't find the car keys, I'm going to come up with something really good. Like, the devil took them. I don't know. I don't have them. So they can't come up with evidence. So how did one guy say it? He said, seems like to save face, and he's a big-time Bigfoot hunter. He said, seems like to save face, you have this group that is pushing this interdimensional Bigfoot, or Bigfoot associated with UFOs.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
And he said there is this divide in the Bigfoot community that, one side saying, well, no, we're not going to do that, and the other side saying, yeah, that's the way it is. And he said it's just nuts. He said it's driving everybody crazy. But this case is very strange because, a guy 40 years a commercial pilot and military pilot. He said, I know what I was looking at. He said, I know what I saw. I wasn't hallucinating.
Yeah.
Said, and the dogs saw it too. He said, matter of fact, they saw it or heard it or smelled it before I did. He said there was a good 2-minute lapse from when the dogs went bananas until that whatever, walked out from the trees. So they either heard it, saw it, or smelled it, or whatever, but they saw it way before I did.
And did he smell anything? Was there any smell associated?
Oh, no smell of any type, no footprints. Like he said, it looked like it walked across and I didn't exist. I wasn't there. It paid no attention to me whatsoever, or the dogs.
Very intriguing. That is interesting. I know you've been looking at. So, have you had many of those kind of? I don't mean that specific kind of case, but many other crypto cases where you are, or is that a one-off?
Pennsylvania has a lot of Bigfoot reports. There are three groups here in Pennsylvania that are two are on the smaller end, a couple, maybe 5-6 people, and there's a larger group that covers the whole state, and they've been at it a long time. And I read their reports. Their reports are up on their website, and a lot of it seems like the southwestern part of the state and the western part of the state are where most of the sightings are, although recently there have been a lot of sightings in the center of the state and toward the north. But, that western part borders right on Ohio, and Ohio is like Bigfoot City. I mean, you have Salt Fork out there, which has seen a decline in reports, but a lot of people say that's because, everybody's out there looking for Bigfoot on the weekend. You got people everywhere. And, and that's another thing. It's just like, when you do a star watch, you get a bunch of people together and you show them what to do, how to do it. You let them look through your equipment and, you sit around, drink coffee, and discuss UFOs. Well, the Bigfoot people get a little, I'm saying, when I say Bigfoot people, I don't mean people that are real researchers. I mean the people that just come out on the weekend to have fun. They show up with a tent camp. They set up camp. They start making hot dogs and hamburgers, and they put the beer keg up, and then they go stomping around the woods, yelling and screaming, flashlights and torches. And so, if I was Bigfoot, I wouldn't want to be around those idiots either. And then we had a guy that was that wasn't here. I think that was out in Washington State. The idiot that dressed up in a ghillie suit, a sniper's ghillie suit, and ran out on the road to scare people. Oh. He didn't scare the truck that hit him.
Oh, God. Oh, dear. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it was unfortunate for him. It was a big truck. I mean, that's I see it in ufology. I see it in the paranormal. I see it in cryptozoology, and I see it in ufology. I mean, there's just this element that you're either looking at something, or you're reading something, or you're talking to them, and you're going like, "Oh my God, these people are actually on this planet."
I know. Hard to believe we're sharing the same space or breath. I wanted to ask you about the Kecksburg case, because that's 65, isn't it? Something along those that neck of the woods.
Yep. That's Pennsylvania's Roswell.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if people know much about the Kecksburg case. I wonder if you could give us a very brief rundown.
Oh, okay. Kecksburg, Kecksburg is a very small town out in western Pennsylvania. And what happened was witnesses say that they saw this streaking object come across the sky, make a U-turn, and crash into the woods. And it was described as an acorn shape, kind of like the Nazi Der Glock, the bell.
Yeah.
Same type of writing around the bottom of it, the whole 9 yards. Unfortunately, that object was being tracked from Canada all across the United States. It was Cosmos 96, I believe. It was a piece of a Russian satellite that was coming down. The story goes that the Army, the military, the Boy Scouts, and everybody they could gather went into the town and shut the town off, and nobody was allowed to go down into the woods where this object was. And then you had 3 witnesses that said they actually walked up to it and they saw it and this, that, the other thing, which they've changed their story now 2 or 3 times, I think. Half the town, like the fire chief, that was the chief at the time, said that never happened. His brother, who's the assistant fire chief, said, "Oh yeah, it did." So you got half the town of Kecksburg believes it happened. You got the other half that swears and declares it never happened. We went out, we looked at the site, and they said, well, they took this tractor trailer down there, a flatbed, and they picked this up, they took it out. There is no way on this earth that a tractor trailer went down that hill and went up the other side without getting pinched in the middle. And if it tried to go up that hill sideways, it would have rolled over. So that's, you can't, they said the Civil Air Patrol was there. Well, we got a hold of the Civil Air Patrol and the guy that was the head of it back in those days. He said, never happened. He said, I've told that to 100 people, but nobody seems to believe me. I said, I believe you. Because I checked with the military. The closest military says, we didn't have anybody out. So I think what you have is a copy of Roswell, because when you look at Roswell on the whole, and you look at Kecksburg on its totality, they are almost exactly identically the same, with the exception of the bodies. You have a crash, you have a vehicle, taken, gone. So I don't put a lot of credence in the Kecksburg case. We have it as an open case, as a matter of fact, and I just sent out a bunch of emails to people to see what kind of response I got. But we were there. People laugh at it. They say, yeah, right. They got a model of it because they made a documentary for TV, and the company that did that made a mock-up of this, and they have this mock-up mounted behind the fire station. And look, it's, when you're dealing with 40 and 50-year-old memories, that's enough right there to make you crazy.
No, it is. I just wondered if there was, anything developed, like, we keep hearing about Rendlesham and Roswell and other cases as well. So it's just, what is the latest news on the ground?
Yeah, and like the UFO hunters, excuse me, the UFO hunters went out there and did a TV program on it, and they had ground radar. They took out ground radar to see if they could find this ditch that was made by the crashing craft. Well, he said, there's no ditch here.
Right. Okay.
And the trees that were broken down when it went through the trees, and they found one tree with a broken branch, and the guy said, yeah, that's it. Well, from the size of this thing and the amount of trees there, it would have took the tops off about half a dozen of them before it hit the ground. And that's not there. I understand now that the property owner doesn't even want anybody down there anymore. He said, just crazy. And the story of the lady whose house was commandeered by the military and took over the house as a command center, her son, who was about 6 or 7 or 8 at the time, he just recently came out and said, that never happened. He said, we weren't even home when it happened. He said, when we came home, he said, we had trouble getting in our driveway because, there were cars parked all over the place. And another thing, it was on the radio, local television, which wasn't much back then, but local television and newspapers. There's not a picture, not one photograph, not one.
Okay, so where was that generated from? Did you find the person or the people who kicked that story off, or?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, that say no more.
Let me say something to all you researchers over there in England. If you're looking for fortune and glory, don't waste your time, because there's always some guy like me out there that's going to make you look silly.
Well, I tell you, it's not the researchers. I tell you, it's the people who report it. It's no, there's certainly no glory or fame or money in this work. I tell you, it's dedication.
Yeah, and well, here we have the fortune and glory crowd. I mean, some of the biggest names in ufology in this country have never seen a UFO, and that's a fact. I mean, they've told me that to my face at conferences when I asked them. They've never seen one. They write about them, they talk about them, they discuss them, and it's like I said, I got 12 books here on Roswell. Which one should I believe?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Oh, it's really boils down to the bottom line, which is the researcher and the investigator. Those are the people that either do the job and come up with an answer, or at least put you in the right direction, or they want to be on a first-class flight, to some exotic city to investigate a rock that somebody found. And there's going to be a TV camera there, and they're going to get paid for it. And then they're going to write a book about it. And then they're going to go to a conference and sell that book.
Well, you know, I don't know. I don't know if any. Well, you know, there are those fame and glory ones, but there aren't that many really in this field that would sell enough books. No, you know, we're not a J.K. Rowling kind of league here. It's just you know, books here and there. I think so. It's not a field that really draws in, you know, where you become a multimillionaire or anything. I don't think that's ever going to happen. You do get those who are kind of.
Well, yeah, but the ones I know here, they live very comfortably. Very.
From there, yeah.
Very. I should live so comfortably.
Yeah, so absolutely. Well, listen, we're coming up to our couple of hours almost. I can't believe it's gone so fast, and it's been wonderful. I was just going to ask you about some of your latest abduction cases. I don't know if we've got time for.
I can give you a quick one. I believe I sent you a picture. Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah, the foot. That's what I was going to ask you. Thank you for reminding me. I take it that's one you were talking about, the feet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A gentleman sent me a picture of his foot, which has on the side of his foot and the sole of his foot, the skin is peeling off on both feet. He only sent a picture of one foot. He said it's happening on both feet. He was abducted. This took place 2 years ago, and the feet are still the same. They're not changing. They keep peeling. The skin keeps peeling off. You know, when I looked at it and I compared it to some other pictures that I pulled up, it almost looks like a chemical burn. A chemical burn would be almost identical. I mean, right? I couldn't find a foot, but I found a hand. And when you look at the hand and the way the skin was and everything, and the color of it underneath was identical to this picture. And then I sent it out to all my researchers, and everybody knew that was doing abduction work. And they all came back with the same thing. The only thing they said they never saw anything or heard anything like that, never came up in any investigations they had. But one said that they had something similar, and when they mean similar, they had the skin peeling and stuff like that. But it was a case a number of years ago where an abductee was returned back to where she was taken, but it was snow-covered ground, and she had no shoes on, and she got the first shots of
to frostbite or something.
Frostbite, and the skin peeled from that. But she recovered. She didn't lose any toes or anything like that. She evidently, when she got where she was still out of it, and then when she came to, she saw she was, standing in the snow, and she got into the house. But that was the only thing that came back, and that came back. I sent that out to probably 12, 14 researchers.
Well,
so I don't. And then he brought up the Allagash case, and in the Allagash case, which was an abduction case, there was also a photograph of the one gentleman that was involved in that, and his feet were peeling. So.
Oh right, I didn't realize that.
So if you go on the net and just look up Allagash site, you will see. I'll give you the guy's name here in a minute, but you will see a picture of him sitting on the edge of a sofa or a bed, and he is showing you the bottom of his sole of his foot, which does remarkably look a lot like what the guy sent, but I don't know what would cause it. I mean, if that was something that was actuality happening to all abductees, then we'd have a lot of reports of that. And the Allagash case, the guy's name is Jack Weiner, Weiner. Shows a picture of the bottom of his foot, and you can see where the skin is peeling, similar, not like, but similar to the one that I sent you. And he said it was from walking barefoot on the floor of the craft.
Oh, how interesting. Oh, and that I've heard people talk about them scraping the skin of the feet and other parts of the body. Now,
yes.
when ladies go and get some beauty treatment, they do what's called, not myself, by the way, I've never done this, do a chemical peel. And also, if you happen to suffer with extremely bad acne, stuff like that, you can do a chemical peel, or you've had some other skin issues or injuries.
Well, yeah, the picture I sent you, it really looks like some type of a burn, a chemical burn of some sort. And when you look at the picture, which I also sent you, of Jack Wiener's foot,
yeah, you did.
His doesn't look that way. His looks like like he was standing up when whatever happened, and he had it on both feet also. But it doesn't look anything like what the guy sent us. His is more, like I said, it looks like a chemical burn. If you look up just pictures of chemical burns, like hand or feet, there's a real good one on there. I mean, it looks identical to this guy's foot. Well, and even with redness, even with the redness underneath the peeling off skin.
Yeah.
Almost like a snake shedding,
Yeah, true. Let me read you this comment from the chat room. It says, "We treat animals we eat very badly, with no compassion, no gratitude, purely as commodity. With all the people that go missing every year, my conclusion is that some bad aliens have swapped technology for permission of the cabal to harvest us in the same manner, using be done by as you did. Oh, well, do as you would be done to, or that kind of thing. Law." So I hope that doesn't sound too ridiculous. Well, maybe not. Maybe not indeed.
No, it's not, because there are some documents out there. I've seen them. I've saved them, I think, of where deals were made with our government and alleged aliens that they would give us technology if they could take so many people off the planet to study and then bring back. And they would give us technology of whatever. And when you think about it, you go back in time, and, right after the war, when all this was supposed to take place in the early 50s, we had this surge of technology,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And so what it looks like, just in my mind, and probably in the mind of the person that just sent that to you, somebody reneged on the deal.
Yeah, I've heard that said too, and it seems to me that I think that something like that happened. I think the fact that guys now went missing for those for that day and all the rest of that, even though they did drag out a dentist to say yes, he was here. I'm suspicious about that. Yeah. But anyway, it's been an absolute delight, and we've just got a couple of minutes left before we have to play ourselves out. So would you like to give if you've got a contact email and any other details you'd like to put out, or any events that you're doing that they can look into or look up, that would be great.
We have an event coming up in April on the 18th in Albertus, Pennsylvania. It's on the website. It's on our Facebook page also. It's going to be a roundtable, a paranormal roundtable. It's going to have ufology, cryptozoology, Bigfoot, Fortean researchers, legend hunters from Pennsylvania. I mean, it's just a really good group of panelists. It's not a conference. This is going to be one-on-one with the people in the audience. They have a question, we'll try to give them an answer. If they want to know how we do it, what we do it, or what we do it with, we're going to tell them. If they want to know what's a hoax and what's not, we're going to tell them. My website on the net is www.uforcop.com, all one word, uforcop.com. And that's the same if you go to Facebook. You can punch in UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania, or you can go to the UFORCOP page. UFORCOP page has a lot more on there, and that's where the pictures are if people want to see what type of equipment we use. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, if you go to the website, UFO Research Center at www.uforcop.com, and you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see it says terrestrial contact. And if you go down to the very first one, it'll say Research Center, Pennsylvania. It says sighting report, but it's also a contact. So if you just put your name, your contact email, or phone number if you want to call, town, state, date, time, and description, like you want me to call, or you want to give me a case, or you want me to look into something for you, I'll be glad to do it. And then just fill in the image verification, hit submit, and it'll come to me. Or if you'd rather get me direct, my email address is butch218 at D Jazz. That's D David, E Edward, J John, A Apple, Z Zebra, D.com. And that's it.
Okay. Well, listen, Butch, I'm looking forward to perhaps hooking up with you and sharing some research and, maybe getting a bit of a roundtable we can do by Skype at some point, maybe, in a month, another month or two that people feel.
Right now, our Skype is a little goofy because we've had all this snow, and it's really tearing, it's just, our ISP is working 1 minute, and it worked fine for a day, and the next day it takes you 3 hours to sign on. And we still have snow, and we still have this terrible cold, so...
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go and say thank you very much. It's been amazing, and I'll update folks with any other information coming through you, and we'll have you on again for an update in another month or 3, if that's okay with you. That would be great.
And thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
All right.